Vishal Mirchandani, who is CEO for Commercial and Retail at Purvanka Limited, is also part of our panel and has joined us. Welcome, Vishal.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Now, commercial real estate is a large vertical. It's comprising of different property types representing different businesses. And the impact of the pandemic is very different on each of these property types and different businesses. Today, we'll be talking about different aspects of the businesses. We have people from all walks of life of commercial real estate. We would be picking their brains on what is it that they're observing as an impact of COVID on their respective sectors. Now, as an asset class, commercial real estate has seen stellar performance in the last few years. It had outperformed many other sectors by a margin. And at the beginning of the year, we were expecting that commercial is going to have another great year. However, nobody would have imagined that something like COVID would happen and it would hit us so hard. In order to kickstart our discussion, let's first hear from our panelists what are their opening comments and what is it that they're witnessing as compared to the pre-COVID times. So I'll go one at a time. Probably I'll start with you, Beliappa. Beliappa, just to set the context, given the fact that we have different kinds of properties under commercial real estate, it would be interesting to know your thoughts on the most important or most curious aspects of any real estate conversation, which is about the prices. It would be interesting to know your thoughts on how prices for different type of properties would get impacted because of the pandemic. And if you see that the prices will be dropping, then how long? Any thoughts around that?
Thank you, Amit. Just to begin with specifically on your question, I think right now, before COVID, I think the market was very ripe and it was right aligned into the business plan, which has been going on past more than 5 to 6 years, how the commercial industry has been turning up, not apart from the leasing and investment sales too. But I think during this particular time, we've been seeing a lot of forthcomings, starting on the debt funding. A lot of companies were looking for funds specific to their projects, and also project funding, a large commercial project, either it's a commercial or residential. But I was seeing a lot of traction, especially on the industrial land purchase and commercial real estate asset purchase. Either it could be a ready investment property, which is yielding some with a good cap rate, and also the forward sale, which is under construction, where you have an anchor tenant on board. And I was seeing a lot of traction, especially in the logistic firm, as just we spoke a bit earlier, on the warehousing side, and build to suit. So as on to earlier, before COVID, I think we had all these tractions were going very, very strongly. I think only post the pre-COVID, I think pre-COVID, we noticed that these businesses were very well playing out to the business plan, which was it was planned on. But however, the COVID pandemic has literally played out, and I would definitely say there is certain amount of slowdown has happened in terms of decision making. But however, pertaining to the price, whether you take the price on the land or whether you take the price on the commercial, it's purely related to the how this asset is located in terms of location, whether it could be primarily A, it could be primarily B, or primarily C. But I would only see a marginal pricing coming down, not beyond 10 to 15 or 18%, because if you look at the industry, the supply of land is not there in the market. And the quality with a clear title being available to us openly to any developer or any industrial company, companies to look at this particular assets is challenging. So knowing fully these land prices will hold on even during this COVID period. And I only see these prices will become more realistic in terms of in the post-COVID. But at this particular time, this is what we notice this short term. This destruction has definitely played very hard on not just our industry. I think all the industries across. I think it's more one has to take all the decisions making which was there on the drawing board in terms of launches. There have been delayed by 6 to 9 months. So in terms of rentals, I don't see great number falling because these numbers are already negotiated and vetted to make sure the tenant occupying a large tech park or a tenant occupying a smaller offices in city center. These are all which running in the market conditions. But however, due to pandemic, like, some people might be saying that, working from home will definitely change the business model. But I see this as a short term. I don't see this as a long term. Even if you look at a long term, I would only see 10 to 15% of the people might continue to work from home for a period of maybe a 1 year, and post that the decision will start changing. So I definitely see there is certain amount of tremor has happened, because purely business. What happens is basically we are not able to move out because of lockdown and unlock. So all these challenges we are seeing in our industry. So it's a matter of time. I think it's a best, I would say, justly correctly to put it across. It's a short-term challenge which we are all facing in this industry.
Very interesting. Just a quick follow-up question, Bilepa. Are the kind of observations similar for the major towns of the state, like Bangalore and Mysore, and maybe different for the smaller towns within the states? And if you could just give me some commentary about, let's say, south of India, that would be interesting to know for our viewers.
See, I would T1 cities in the south of India. I would say Bangalore, Chennai. These are very prominent cities, and these cities have done in the past very good business transactions, whether it is commercial, whether it's logistics or a warehousing, whether you are coming to the residential pockets, because the demand and supply has always been there in the market. But when you come to T2 cities, especially, that, like, for example, you mentioned about Mysore. We don't have to mention specific to Mysore. There are so many T2 cities, like, you have Tumkur, you have Hassan. These are all very interconnected to Bangalore city, or Chennai also, if you take Ranipet, Industrial Belt. And, there are so many other pockets are there. But these aspiring people who wants to come and work in Bangalore are looking at one step forward from these small towns to come towards Bangalore. But the business model as on today, which we are working, I think is definitely suited to somebody to be in a T1 cities. But Mysore as a city, we have seen it in the past and also in the present. I think the quality of real estate space in terms of whether it's an IT park, whether it's any kind of a business where it is location advantage you have. So there are some challenges. So I would definitely see T1 city like Chennai and Bangalore, which is right now, I think there is this 6-lane highway which is being done by the center government, interconnecting Bangalore and Old Madras Road through Chennai. If that comes in span of next to 2-3 years, I think the kind of traction we see in that particular road and the people traveling on the road, the timeline gets reduced. The whole parameter changes. So coming to T2 cities, I think it's still a long way to see. I think there is potential, like Hassan is there and Tumkur is there. But I think Tumkur eventually will become a satellite city for Bangalore, to supporting the labor pool largely to settle down and work from there. So I think definitely Tumkur will be the next small city to grow.
Amit, sorry, you're on mute.
Yes, I realize that. Thank you. Thank you, Bilepa, for your commentary. Vishal will probably start with you now. Thanks for joining us, Vishal. We've all seen how pandemic has forced demand reduction in the retail sector, and however unusual this behavior is for humans, and there is a need to socialize, step out of the weekends. But it has led to serious impact on the retailers' ability to pay up rents for their establishments. Now, among different CRE sectors, retail is arguably the most hit sector. Now, what are your thoughts on developers' ability to extend any comfort to the retailers and the tenants, any rent-free durations, any discounting to the rents? And are you witnessing some trends across in these lines across grade A retail spaces or grade B retail spaces? Some commentary would be interesting to know. Thanks.
So to begin with, it's not just the retail sector which has been severely affected, but the hospitality sector also.
Sure.
The two sectors which have got severely impacted. And if you have to look at retail, I think you have to divide it into probably three parts. And a fourth part which has been emerging and growing. So three parts is essentially malls, shopping malls, high streets. Okay, these are two parts. And the third is tier 1, tier 2 stroke tier 3 cities, right? And the fourth part, which is retail oriented, is the e-commerce retail, right? So the share of the pie is growing, and that process actually started. I remember when I was in Shopperstop, we started shopperstop.com in 1999. Amazon had just started 3 years back. I'm just telling you this, okay? So that's the kind of story we had anticipated at that point of time. That's how the business will grow, etc. But of course, we had different challenges than that proved to be a very too early a start. That said, I think we have seen e-commerce benefiting from these big accidents that take place. For example, when we had the Lehman Brothers crisis, right? Actually, I'll go back. I'll go to the World Trade Center bombing, right? The 9/11. 9/11 actually started, the first wave of big demand for e-commerce. Then it came in 2009. That's the post Lehman Brothers crisis. That's when again e-commerce started picking up a big time. And then, of course, the last decade, 2010 onwards to 2020, we've seen huge energy in the e-commerce sector. And of course, I believe that this pandemic is going to, and we are witnessing it. We are all customers. We understand the impact on our lives and how others are behaving. So there's a huge behavioral change, right, in that part of the business. So I think that's a fourth sector which is going to be. It was growing on its own, but I think today it's going to contribute a lot to the retail sector per se. So the rub-off of the several SKUs, several categories that you see on Amazon will lead to demand from retail stores also, and that has been seen actually, and vice versa. But coming back to where we are today in the pandemic, as far as the retail sector is concerned, purely, I think the tier 1 city shopping center retail story is the worst hit, right? That's why I broke it up into 4 parts. The same city, high street, is probably less hit from a demand point of view because it is not subjected to so much of social distancing risks as the shopping mall is concerned. But of course, high street rentals are far greater in some cases. So I think that is a story that is playing out. And tier 2 cities, I think the demand is anywhere quite a moderate demand. But with this situation and looking at how tier 2 cities have been impacted with the pandemic, the relatively speaking, from a COVID point of view, the COVID impact on tier 2 cities is lesser than the COVID impact in tier 1 cities. So the resultant negative impact also has been lower. So, and you are now reading that the rural demand story is far better than the urban demand story. So I think that the agri-led or agriculture-led demand that is coming into the tier 2 cities. So I would say that the demand, the retail consumption demand in tier 2 cities is not as severely impacted as a tier 1 city. So now let's come to the real severely impacted part of the demand, right? So retail in shopping centers particularly, I think has been very severely hit. That's where you see the rentals. That's where you see the real institutional investment taking place. The big PE investors, the big institutional investors that have actually invested in these shopping mall assets across the country, and you have large operators and you have standalone operators also. I think to begin with, I think it is a story like the hospitality story. Uh, Unless the pandemic or there is a cure and a vaccine, both for the COVID virus, I think it will be very difficult for the retail, the retail destinations to really pick up to the extent we saw during the pre-COVID times. But that said, I think we are very sociable people. We like to go out. That's the only leisure activity that we all have as Indians. Um, so I think the bounce back will also be pretty fast once the confidence sets in. And I think we had another, sort of I'll call it a speed breaker by a second lockdown or implementing another limited lockdown, etc. That has slowed down again the revival of the shopping center and the retail story, right? Because again the confidence has dropped a bit. But we had, until the start of the second round of lockdown, we had seen some shopping increase. So across the country, I think we are seeing footfalls recovering anywhere in the range of 20 to 40%. Okay, depending on the location, etc. But I think that's the range that we will stay in for quite some time till we really are confident about a cure and a vaccine. But I also believe that once we hit the 50% footfall, 50% business recovery, I believe then the recovery for the retail sector will be very sharp on the upside, right? So because it's it's what you say is word of mouth. You keep hearing that so and so went to the mall, so and so went to the restaurant, went for a movie, and people start building that confidence starts building up in people's minds. So the fear obviously starts reducing, right? Uh, I think that will happen post the 50-60% barrier is broken, and I think that will happen only post December of this year, right? I feel from Jan 21 we can see a better recovery, but I see a full recovery taking place, say about 9-12 months from now. That's when I would say that the cure and the vaccine would at least be within the horizon, right? And people will understand what COVID is all about. Today, still there is a lot of ambiguity and gray area in understanding what this virus is all about, and there's a lot of fear that is dominating our decision making. So I think that is the retail side. And from a rent side, I think it's a very challenging situation because if there are no sales, the ability of retailers to pay rents diminish accordingly, and there is only that much time for that they can sustain the negative cash flows. So I think there has been a meeting of minds, meeting of objectives in this case. I think there is a mid path that has been discovered and agreed on by many retailers and shopping center developers, where some have agreed to 50%, some have agreed to 70% rent and or revenue share, and some in extreme cases where the business is really bad. And to begin with, the shopping center itself, even during the pre-COVID time, was a mediocre shopping center, for example. So when during this time it will really crash more severely than a very big or well-performing shopping center. So in those cases, I think there have been some exits, and also cases where the rent terms have changed to pure revenue share. But I think that's a short-term story. As long as there is work going on at the back in our laboratories, etc., on this vaccine and cure, I think everybody is hopeful and quite certain that this is a short-term problem that we are going to face. But I think the short term also needs to be defined a little bit or bit more clearly or understood a bit more clearly. So minimum we are looking at 6 months, but I don't think that the pain will go on beyond 12 months, right, for the retail sector. And I believe that for the office sector, I think it is not going to be beyond 6 months, right? It is not going to go to 12 months the way it is in retail, because retail is obviously very badly hit. Office spaces is not. So office spaces we are seeing demand even today, right? And we are expecting Jan 2021 start to be very, very strong. In fact, we are expecting even December 20 start end to be quite encouraging, I'll say. Not comparable with last year. Obviously, it's not there's no way you can compare, but it's going to be extremely encouraging because we're seeing a lot of traction already beginning to shape up in the office sector.
Thanks, Vishal. This is really very helpful. Just a quick follow-up question. Do you feel that that the percentage of people getting into more rev share kind of agreements in the retail sector would increase as a result of this pandemic and people getting to more hedge their risk about what may happen?
No, I think no. See, these are all knee-jerk reactions. We saw this after Lehman Brothers, right?
Hmm.
I have not seen as many malls shut down the way I saw between 2005 to
Hmm.
2010, right? There were 600 malls. Out of 600 malls, I think about half of them shut down.
Hmm.
If you have to call that, we saw such a big exit taking place, lot of stores shutting down. We are not going to see that now because the mall supply has been quite regulated, quite moderate. Okay, and therefore, great malls are very few, good malls are few. So the good, retail spaces of good malls or great malls is a price commodity, right? It's a price possession. I don't think it is going to be, and it's for long term. Once you sign today, you are there for 10 years, right? Or thereabouts. So once you're there for, when somebody's committing for 10 years means you're locking that, it becomes a big entry barrier. I remember, I'm not going to name brands, right? When I was running, we were running the retail shopping center because I was running the earlier company when I was running the retail and the office space business. So we were running the best number one mall in South India, right? Orion Mall. And there were two very large Fortune 5, Fortune 50 retailers wanting to enter India, and they wanted space in my mall, but I could not give them space. I had to painfully deny them space. right? Because I had no space to give. I was already contracted with other retailers, right? And they found it extremely difficult to launch their brand in Bangalore. It took them almost 2 years to actually launch the first store in Bangalore. So I think it is a long-term story. We are thinking all these views are being presented are very short-term, whereas these businesses are made for the long term. But survival right now is in the short term. But these businesses that we are talking about, they are well capitalized. Okay, they are well run. They're strong brands with good supply chains and good customer franchise. So it's only in the short term that you lose out, but that's what the entire world is going through. It's not unique to one story, one location, or one brand or few brands. It's for the entire sector. So I think it is going to it is not a short term. The short term concern is not going to give you a long term pain in the sector.
So in the short term, Vishal, though, as you rightly mentioned, that has been a dialogue between the tenants and the landlords. Is there any generic statement that we can make for our audience in terms of what are the top results of those discussions? Are people more looking at rent-free durations? Are people more looking at discounting? Are there any such,
No,
amalgamated?
I mentioned that to you. So there are various things that are happening right now. So if the mall is a great mall, for example, that mall is delivering the highest profit to a retailer, right? And has been doing so for the last 5-7 years, right? I think that retailer cannot threaten that mall at all. That I will exit, etc., etc. He can only request that I'm going through this kind of a problem because of this thing. So you can't do that with the great malls. Okay, it's just a power.
It's very like situational and more demand supply
Yeah,
type
like I
of thing.
said, it all depends on case to case, right? It all so and as like I said, the supply of mall has been very moderate in the last 5-7 years versus what it was in the decade starting 2010 to 2020. Okay, we saw especially from 2005 to 2010 rather, we saw a huge supply of mall space. Okay, it was far too much for the consumption business to actually absorb.
Sure,
Now,
sure.
the good and great malls are very few. Okay, so I would
Um,
rather take the hit right now rather than take a risk on getting exited from those malls. And then
so if you're in a long-term business, then don't
exactly,
think short-term.
exactly. But a mall that I can let go of, I know if I exit today, I'm anyway, even if I come back after 1 year, the space will be available because nobody else is going to take this.
Got it. Got it. Thanks, Vishal. This is very, very helpful. Thanks.
Yeah.
We'll move on then. Arnav, we have a question for you. Um, just like retail, co-working spaces are also impacted by the pandemic. You belong to WeWork, who had been the flag bearer of co-working spaces in India as well as the world. It would be good to hear your views on how Unlock 2.0 is helping co-working spaces find their product market fit with the low demand. And do you think that a different kind of a price economics will prevail for co-working in the post-COVID era?
So thanks for the question and thanks for having me here. To Vishal's point, and there's a lot of similarity between, as far as I'm concerned, between co-working and retail. The thing is, as far as co-working is concerned in India, it's a new phenomenon, and we take commercial spaces. Our way of operation is like hospitality, and our billing system is more like retail because we sell memberships, right? So it's a mixture of all. And to what Vishal mentioned, like in 2005, we saw a lot of malls exiting as such, but the great malls remained basically because the promoters of these malls understood retail, and that's still doing well. And I think that sense and sensibility needs to the market to understand co-working also, because it's a segment which is here to stay. The situation that we are facing today is pretty much consistent everywhere, right? The whole industry has been impacted. And what the situation has given us an opportunity to come up with innovative solutions and practices as such. So emergence of new ways of working, such as rostered work shifts and timings, making operations more reliant on technology for business continuity will come into play majorly. And we are at WeWork, we are trying our best to be abreast with all these new nuances that will come into the business as such. As far as companies are concerned, they are rethinking their existing business models and are adjusting them to come to the new paradigm of working as such. So this presents a big opportunity for flexible workspace providers for sure. As Vishal mentioned, I think we will start seeing some movement somewhere in December, January per se. And to actually fructify all these things, it will take us up to March. But then it's the mode of survival from today till March. Because again, I compare this to the 2005 example that Vishal gave for retail is the same thing that we are facing in the co-working industry also. And there are practically roughly around more than 400 co-working players. Each one has their own strengths. Each one has their own weaknesses, including us. But how do we survive till the next March is something that needs to be seen. Even from an end user perspective, I think the end user, which is the employee, which is the actual person who sits on the desk, is they're demanding high standards of health and hygiene in their workspaces. And unlike the past, this could be a deal breaker completely. So social distancing, these are here to stay, till the time, even if we get a vaccine or even if we get an antidote to this, I think it's going to take some time for it to fructify again till next year. And we need to be very, very people-centric now in terms of how we are operating, and which has been, like for WeWork also, has been a member-first approach always. Now that means that your densities will change, your square footage to desk will change. That means, so there are a lot of other parameters which will come into play, and here the landlords as well as the operator will have to come in together to ensure that the right product is being offered in the market. Also, I feel that people need the sense of community at work, and which is essential in helping people reconnect. So the future of the trade by itself, by trade I mean co-working, is great. We feel that there are more positives than negatives for sure. But these are testing times, and here there has to be a consistent support between all the players as such.
Thanks, and very, very interesting thoughts. We'll talk a little bit more about co-working space as we go along the webinar. I'll now move on to talk to Sanjay. Sanjay, you come from a very different background, integrated cities, very different scale, very different aspect of commercial real estate. Now, another aspect which can be an enabler for commercial segment is the focus on the make in India and make for India. Do you see this as an opportunity for India and commercial segment in particular? Would love to hear your thoughts on this, please.
Sure. Thanks so much, Amit and 99 Acres for having all of us. And thanks to all the viewers who have joined in. I got a bit of chance to have a quick sneak peek, a lot of interesting questions coming up. As they say, all intelligent questions have the answer hidden in themselves. So the fact that you said that, is there an opportunity? Obviously it is. But before I do that, as you mentioned, we come from a very different perspective. So for the set of all the viewers, when I will, and the participants, when I share some of these which may seem not so obvious, I would like to give a quick perspective of why we are doing it. So Mahindra World City, which is part of Life Spaces, we have 4 world cities which are built around this integrated ecosystem. And as we go later, we will talk about it, about the concept of livelihood, living life together. So if you really are able to create a sustainable and a self-sustaining ecosystem, it adds a lot of value. It ensures that clients are more successful. There's faster time to market. It ensures there's an ease of doing business. It ensures people have a better quality of life when they are working, or they are residents or even the visitors. And from a larger perspective, it contributes to Make in India, because you can actually accelerate and ensure companies come in. So we have been doing it to give you a perspective that the insights which we share, we heard from Belyappa, Vishal, Arnav, the tremendous complexities. Now I would step back and say, multiply that by 200 times for every single client, and multiply that by 1000 times in size. So the reason why I say it is while each of the individual malls or multiple tenants or the multiple folks which are there, even out of the two Mahindra World cities at Chennai and Jaipur, at in a pre-COVID era, we had 160 companies, or about 130 of them operational, with about $3 billion of actual investment on ground, and 1.5 lakh direct, and about close to another 2.5 times of that indirect folks coming just in and out. So that is the scale at which we'll operate. So that's why I said 200x. And we talk in acres. To give you a perspective, just one of the 4 world cities, if I translate into a saleable equivalent area, it will be about 8 billion square feet. So it, because of, but obviously it is an industrial infrastructure. So one is what we will present, we are able to give an enriching viewpoint because of this insight. The second thing, I agree with all the commonalities, but what I really see it is different, and which is, I think, I'm sure all of us are looking at it. It is important to see whether it is COVID or any other change which is coming in. What is the change in the client perspective which is coming in? Because that client perspective or the client need change is for ultimately drive us to make the change and adapt. So if I look at it, COVID, whatever time it comes, but that is COVID is just one. The reason why it is unprecedented is because while there is a health or a medical aspect, but as a result, the supply chains got disrupted. As a result, because people were not able to go to malls or the end markets were not open, you did not have a choice of the goods. So therefore, the availability got impacted because there were people who were just not able, the factories were not being able to open, or so therefore how I see is the new normal is, I think VUCA itself, we thought it is very complex, but I think new normal is this, where all these changes are happening at one go. So from a client perspective, whether we are as a consumer or whether I'm running a factory or a make in India, the new normal will be I have to quickly adapt to the change and offer it. So some of the change which we will see in the commercial real estate, traditionally it has been a market about rental. How I see it is, because of this challenge, the new opportunity will be the definition of the commercial real estate. I'll be bold enough to put a hypothesis that the definition of commercial real estate will change. So if I look at a today client, whether they are manufacturing, whether they are IT or ITS services, or whether they are retail and commercial, the fundamental value drivers and the need drivers will be, there is a strong need to de-risk the business. I don't know, I may go up, I may go down. I need to de-risk the business. I need to actually ensure wherever I am, I will be able to create some redundancy either in different locations, different geographies. So at any given time, whatever is out of red or containment zone will run, others will not run. I have to ensure my goods and services are available. So there's a need for diversification. The third is even production. Earlier you had over concentration and a huge setup. Now for all you know, combined with this disruption, and also that the new technologies which are coming in like industry 4.0, the scale of operation may work even at a smaller economic unit, and while transition may happen from there, but therefore there's a change. So if you take these 3 changes and you add the layer of what service providers do, all of us, it actually, this challenge sets up a beautiful opportunity for us, where we redefine from a classic office, commercial, retail, to say, can I create a long-term sustainable annuity model for all the clients. And as long as that is there, I'm sure everyone else will, the cap rates may change because that is driven by what is the interest rate. But you are actually providing service, you are providing ramp up and ramp down, and you are providing business flexibility. So I will go back, and the top 3 trends I pick to connect with Make in India is a lot of MNCs as well as Indian companies are looking, can we do a contract manufacturing, or can we do a small hub? When I will come into India or I want to start a new geography, can I just have a smaller hub, really see how it goes? Can I have a 5 to 8 year contract for a place? So factory on rent or a standard design factory, it's a rental model. The second model, I think some Vishal also alluded, Belyappa also alluded, that the e-commerce is opening up. I would actually combine it with a larger thing, that the e-commerce boom combined with the fact that now with a one nation, one GST, there'll be possibly smaller regional warehouses, but bigger in scale. Therefore, to have a warehouse which is, it is no longer your store and forward, it is actually reaching out to your client, and your, if you will combine it with the analytics, real time adjustment of your products and services, and then you go back and you build a layer of how all of this will deliver. So even digital as a platform, so you have an opportunity for industrial on a rent, you have an opportunity for warehousing combined with the e-commerce boom which is happening, and then you can offer a series of services which is almost like a platform, and that will drive in, and that is what has been actually growing. If you want, I can talk about it now or later. About in midst of the lockdown, we have actually seen a total different trajectory of our business growth.
So we would love to hear that, but I have a quick question, and just to kind of build up upon your thought. Are we also saying in the same argument that probably while the formats may change from larger formats, more efficiencies, to more distributed, smaller formats with lesser efficiency, but better risk management? And are we also saying that creating long-term sustainable annuity business is much more um, important as compared to the so-called uh, high cap rate, high rental yields kind of businesses, but with higher risk? And do you see, Sanjay, that given the fact that such kind of pandemics are very, very difficult to predict, do you foresee any impact on the way that people will introduce indemnity clause or legal risk coverage clauses, or probably a bit more focus on different type of insurances that one would want to have their own businesses? Do you think that these also would go hand in hand in the way that you see foresee the future coming across?
Sure, great questions. The short answer is yes and no, but I'll just elaborate on what I agree and what is different. I think some of the first part which you talked of, a lot of things is very true. One thing which I would want to add differently is it will, even if you have a distributed network, it need not, and a smaller network, it need not necessarily be at a lower efficiency. In fact, if you look from a efficiency, or even it can be as good, because of you will add a digital or a automated layer. And from a traditional developer or whoever is an investor who's creating this, in fact, everyone knows the bigger is the size, the more is the squeeze which the client wants. So in fact, you may actually improve the yield. So in a way, it is a good way. But I think more than the economics, I think what is the reason why this will be driven, earlier we were talking of scale and over concentration from a cost perspective. What I think new normal, what has changed is you will succeed, or you will have the economic growth if finally the distribution, either you're able to serve the need or you're able to deliver. So therefore, now the cost of distributed setup, whether it is for manufacturing or services or warehouse, is the cost of actually business. It's an insurance cost. So like many of us take a term loan, it is just a cost of should there be a eventuality. So now from a good to have, it will become a must have. So that's why it does not necessarily impinge on being lesser efficiency. The other thing you asked from a risk perspective, just like there were series of force majeure clauses and all the other things, the clients obviously will come, and same way we will come, and there will be a mutual meeting of minds on what are the potential risks. But tomorrow the risk can change. I think the critical understanding is that there should be a collaborative approach to understand the perspective, which is a 360-degree perspective. What is the client? What are their customers looking for, and what are service providers or platform providers are looking for? So there is a meeting of mind. In a pandemic, the important thing is that we enable the business continuity. And that is where I want to give an example is, while we were right from even lockdown, all the essential services companies, whether it was a food and food supply or a medical devices or a healthcare companies, they were operating because they were allowed. But what enabled them to operate, and that is where we were different compared to others, was the ecosystem service envelope which we had created. If we were not ready, imagine someone is even trying to figure out at 2:30 a.m. there's a notification you are allowed. Now next day what will happen? So because of the service envelope and a long-term planning which was done, they could enable it. So the important thing for clients is to look at business continuity and resilience, and then be a bit flexible. And if I enabled it, there are client case studies, and I'm happy to share with some of your participants later on and offline, where clients, because they were open while their competitors were closed, actually managed to gain additional export business, and they were exporting to Europe and USA for things like manufacturing components, because some of them in those geographies industrial components were. So they were exporting engineering and auto components. There was a very interesting company which actually makes crocheting needles and so on. They knew people are at home. People in Europe actually wanted to have a gainful hobby. So suddenly they were actually recruiting people and working in dual shift. So I think that is just some nuances of how the opportunity will scale up.
Thanks, Sanjay. Very, very interesting commentary on the, yeah, Anna, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just to add to what Sanjay mentioned, so like he stressed on de-risk, diversification, production. So I club it together in the flexibility perspective as such, because we are providing flexibility to the operators or to the end user, and that's the norm today, right? And also what Sanjay again mentioned about service preparedness. So now that's where I say that the flexible office space and the co-working spaces environment will flourish in post the COVID era, is basically because you have professionals taking care of this for the end user, and the end user needs to just concentrate on what they have to do, which is like either production or maybe the software development kind of a scenario. But from an infrastructure point of view, everything is ready for them, and that's where the service industry of co-working comes into play.
Great, thanks, Arnav. Like Sanjay, you mentioned that commercial real estate is being looked at from the perspective of rental yields. So I'll probably move on and ask a question to you, Beliappa, and this is about commercial properties have been a good investment options because of their ability to provide great rental yields and capital appreciation as well. Would you have any thoughts from where you are, from your vantage points, and how and if this would change in the future? Just bringing, building up on the comment that Sanjay made. Beliappa, you're mute, just like me.
Yeah, I think just to get come to these commercial properties, CRE assets all over India, I think rentals, we might see some kind of a destruction pan India. As we know, it is a global phenomena, which is definitely, it was not within our control. It was unexpected, and which we saw there was a total played out on not just our India, I think all over the world. And however, most of the investors seeing this as an opportunity right now, because they see CRE assets are the only one which was giving a great cap rates anywhere between 8 to 8.5, and during this COVID times too. Because these opportunity and the potential opportunity which most of the investors and the institutions are seeing as on today, because we just take an example as interest rates which are falling right now today, because we are seeing it, it's around the corner at 5.5 and 6. But this will definitely had a great advantage in terms of yield largely on these rent yielding assets. And this gives a very healthier investment as the rental escalation benefits the investor who's engaged on a long-term plan. So I'm seeing this particular time, there are a lot of institutions are looking at a great larger number of ITS assets, which are yielding a great rental income, rentals. And you have a good anchor tenants, which are there existing presently on those assets. And also they're seeing some of the sales, they're very proactively, whether any asset which is there, which is under construction, where it's a built to suit, where an anchor tenant is already signed. So these ones are really literally opening doors for most of the investors to come in and talking to us, though they're not able to travel in these particular times, but we are engaging as we speak today. I think we are engaging to most of the Japanese investors today from Bangalore. And as we speak, we already are in the advanced stage of due diligence with two large assets in India. And just to which we never expected such great interest will come. And to also parallelly to notice, and the developers also showing a very positive sign to see this particular transaction or a discussion or a due diligence are going along hand in hand. So that's really helping us a lot in the event of this particular pandemic. And also, if you largely look at if you India, and if you MNCs like Adobe, Google, or Microsoft, they are more driven on a global market, and they continue to invest in India. But there's no, because they are the one who are hiring ITS sectors, and also along with that, they have many other big names to add to it. So they are also in the process of looking from a global perspective side. So they'll continue to invest in India, and some of these discussions which we have been delayed purely because this pandemic. Because I only see between 6 to 9 months from now, there will be some delay in certain discussions which is supposed to take shape. But there are discussions which we already initiated and already started in the way back in February. Those discussions are going. They are not anywhere stopping here, because they are very, very focused and what they want to do. And because they're looking at the minimum cap rate of in India, where you get an asset which is yielding more than 8 to 8.5. That's a great number to look at. And also they're looking at the quality of the building. I think in India, I think most of the IT companies, if you look around, I think most of the developers are making sure the quality of the building is not compromised. And they're willing to listen to the occupiers, the kind of specification, the kind of design, and they're willing to open up their mind to say how to accommodate them so that they remain long-term with them. So some of the developers might have a liquidity crunch, but they may be looking at a larger projects to move on. So they might liquidate now, because looking at the opportunity which is coming in their way. So I definitely see there's a great potential at this particular time. And as Sanjay was saying, and Vishal was also saying, I think there is a short-term hit where specifically coming to commercial real estate projects where it is the drawing board. So there are some discussions were happening, but those are all delayed purely because of this pandemic. So I would only see the window of 6 to 9 months, there could be delay in terms of making this building activated for the construction. But I'll definitely see these buildings coming in near future. And also there is a great, supply is not so great compared to Bangalore or Chennai or Mumbai. There are people are continuously taking up a large spaces. So if you look at that aspects, but the new buildings which is supposed to come into the main market stream is very less if you look at overall percentage. That's really, if you take CBD, for example, in Bangalore, or SBD in Bangalore, or a Whitefield or Prospect, there are a lot of projects on the pipeline, maybe a 7 million or maybe 10 million. These buildings are delayed purely because of pandemic, but there is an interest shown by most of the IT/ITES companies. But looking at the investment which you're asking, I think definitely there is a great demand which is developing right now. And for us, being in these particular times, challenging times, and we are in the due diligence stage, that itself gives us a great sign for the commercial real estate market.
So,
Thank you, Peter. Yes, go ahead,
Amit, can
Sanjay.
I just add a point to
Please.
that? I think it is great. He talked of potential, but as basic physics, he said, finally you succeed when the potential energy is converted into, kinetic energy. So I thought, let me give you an example of the kinetic energy. While a lot of action is happening, even during the lockdown which started, but because these conversations, as you know, take a long time. Even in Q4, across all our Mahindra World cities and origins, we actually signed up clients from US, Far East, Japan, and Europe remotely during the lockdown. And that has not stopped. In fact, even in the quarter which has just closed, we have got 4 MSMEs who signed up and actually signed up on a one-time lease, because this has given them an opportunity to really capitalize on some of the new things which has come up. Just one, I'm giving an example, which is the PPE industry. The new transfer from 0 to 60 days, from not producing anything to actually now a 10,000 crore PPE industry, and that is just driven by PPE, by MSMEs, not necessarily some of the biggest players. So in fact, on this June 27, the World MSME Day, we announced 4 of them coming in. And the reason, I think what they're doing is, the trend which I see commonly is people will want to be in a self-sufficient but a safe space, still on good growth corridor, but away from the congested hubs, and somewhere where they are connected to their businesses, whether B2C or B2B. So if that's happening, I thought we are just not talking of future. The action is here and now. I just wanted to emphasize and reinforce.
Yeah, Amit, I need to add one more point. As we speak today, and most of the IT/ITES companies who had started the discussion, as Sanjay was saying, in his particular forefront, those who have started discussion, who had signed LOI and in the process of vetting the entire interior, they have not stopped the work because of pandemic, because they are very clear in their plan how many people needs to be hired and when they have to go live. These decisions are going, because as on today we speak, we have almost our own company has done about more than 1.5 million square feet office space signing, but these are completely signed, sealed, and the work is going on, and somewhere 1.5 months from now the building will be active. So add to this, most of the ITES companies who are occupiers in major tech parks today are nowhere have come forward and said, we need a moratorium, we need a rental waiver, or we need to reduce the rent. Such discussions have not taken shape in the market, because I know large portfolio developers, we've been also in touch on a regular basis, and they are very openly telling us, because we have a demand within our own tech park. Because somebody is asking, is he vacating? I will need a space. So it's the point here of what we're trying to stress very, very firmly, we need to say is, the market is continue to grow. Though there is a delay, will definitely happen in this particular time. No doubt, destruction has taken shape, not just in our vertical alone. It's across our industry, whether it's the banking, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's export, whether it is logistic. But point here is, everything is going as defined, by the clients, and the developers are encashing these rents without any trouble.
Thanks. Vishal, from your vantage point, how do you see the large real estate tenants as in IT companies, um, is there any impact of working from home from your vantage point that you see in terms of trends changing? Unlike what Beliappa is telling that, at the early stage, we can get to see that there is hardly much impact. In fact, there is much more conviction and there is adequate demand. What's your opinion and thought on this, Vishal? Vishal, you are also on mute.
Uh, to begin with, the big companies, the giant companies are the ones who have been able to handle this situation very well. So extremely resilient. While they are very large, they've been able to implement business continuity plans faster and better than smaller companies. They have got technology, security, and coordinated efforts done extremely well. So they've taken care of all the aspects and been quite effective in delivering efficiency during this 3 or 4 months of lockdown that we've experienced. In fact, I would say India has really shown through the entire world as in delivering efficiency of performance in this lockdown period. So we've got appreciation from these large tenants, large companies, which are Fortune 500, Fortune 100, Fortune 50, Fortune 20 companies. So you name the large company, and they have been really appreciative of the way India, the Indian workforce has performed, and how the Indian office space developers and managers have been able to deliver. So I think that is the background. If you look at the stock market in the US, you'll see all the top companies, stock prices, all the top companies, all the technology companies, they are really zooming. Like Tesla has doubled in the last 6 months, right? Just for example. Amazon is doing very well. They've added jobs during the lockdown period. Tesla has added jobs. So I think what we are seeing right now is a huge level of resilience, because the belief is that technology will once again drive growth momentum. Okay. Now that's going to be combined with medtech, medtech, medical tech, and healthcare. So these are all going to be related activities which are going to expand the market. And they're going to be heavily led by the large companies. The big companies will get bigger. And on the other hand, what we believe is going to happen that, last 5 years, we saw a lot of captives. For example, JP Morgan has got their own outsourcing arm here in India. Goldman Sachs has got their own outsourcing back office arm here. So they're called captives. And what TCS and Infosys and our Indian IT companies do is outsourcing support. So what is going to happen now is that we're going to see a larger share going to outsourcing companies. So, and that's why you're seeing a big movement in the stock market for these companies in India. Okay, so there is a big expectation that to be able to create that nimbleness, a lot of the companies will outsource growth, IT and IT services needs to these companies. Whereas the large companies will continue to grow through the captive plans, right? So I think slight tweak is going to take place, but the big boys are going to be driving hard, and they're going to drag the market forward, and they have the ability to sustain these kind of short-term blips. So for example, rent payments from the big players are near 100%. Okay, and on time. There is no follow-up required, etc., etc. There's a standard procedure. It is an auto credit to your account. It is coming almost 100% on time, right? But they are more demanding, so they will demand more of safety, security measures, healthcare, all of that. So they want value addition, right? They want to ensure their employees are safe, employees are motivated, attrition levels are controlled, so on and so forth. So I think we have to go to the next level now. We can't be at the same level that we were earlier. So in fact, I was seeing an interview on Fox Business with a large real estate company in US. So there's going to be a lot of tenancy shift that will take place from old developments to new developments, because the old developments will not be able to serve the needs of the safety, security, healthcare needs, and the other lifestyle related needs of the modern workforce and the post-COVID era. So we're going to see a huge shift that coming through, and there will be a premium paid for that. Naturally, because if you are seeking that value add, then you will pay that value add. And so that I think is a very big story that is going to play out in the next 5-10 years, in my view, and it's beginning to play out. Coming to your work from home point, I think work from home has become like a very media line. Work from home is going to take away office space, demand, and all that. That is all rubbish. Okay. Now let me tell you, TCS came on to made an announcement 15 or 20 days after the lockdown happened.
Yes.
That they expect 75% of their workforce to work from home after 3 years. So that big shift is going to take place. Now, 2 months after that, chairman of Tata Sons came, who was earlier the CEO and managing director of Tata Sons, Tata TCS, and who is now the Tata Sons chairman. He came and he said, no, this is not going to happen. Work from home is not a reality. We cannot afford it. It cannot happen. It is not a viable model. So there is something known as a diminishing value. There is a diminishing value to that. See, just take yourself, for example. Or you look at any other manager, not yourself. I would look at a manager who is working. Typically, our houses are small. We are not living in large houses like you have in the US. You have an extra study and this and that. Here you are living, and you have kids playing. You have work happening at home, housework happening at home. You don't have a peaceful surrounding in the mind to be able to do good work. You can do 2-3 hours of good work. You can do once a week from home. That's a break for you. So that motivates you. But it's not going to be engaging enough. It is not going to be motivating enough for you to be able to deliver the results that a company would want you to deliver. Right? So work from home is already existing. We have 5 to 10%, to the extent of 5 to 10% of employees or employee time already being contributed from work from home. That may increase to 15-20%. So by let's say 20-30% or 50% for 30-40% more time, employee time will be spent from home. Yes, that will happen. But that is not only because of this. This is just a catalyst. But as a result of this, what is going to happen is that because of the de-densifying trend that is going to take place, means that we'll require more area per seat that an employee occupies, right? So 15 years back, your one seat in the office occupied about 125 square feet, 15 years back. It has been coming down through the years to 70 square feet, right? So employees, crudely speaking, have been packed like sardines to control costs in the office, right? But now you cannot seat employees in this level of density. You've got to give them more space. So social distancing, de-densification will take place in offices, right? So there will be that small, the effect of work from home as far as office space demand is concerned will be more than adequately compensated by the de-densification of office space. Okay. So modern spaces will deliver better value. De-densification within the offices. This will result in higher office demand for quality spaces. Okay. Old office spaces which are outdated, not suitable, are going to struggle or they will require refurbishment. One big developer in India today, for example, one big developer is doing a renovation of IT park in South India at the cost of 150 crores. Just to make it relevant, right? To bring it up to standard, because this was made decade plus back. So if you want to be relevant, you have to do certain things so that you are able to connect and engage with your occupiers. You've got to be relevant, and that's a process. It goes on. It's a continuous process. So
sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I think there is no unidimensional point here. There are multidimensional points that will be used to engage with occupiers, and there will be multiple angles and opportunities that will emerge in the post-COVID era, which I think developers are already getting aware of. They are quite cognizant of that, and a lot of plans are being changed. The way we are speaking to occupiers has changed. So I think there is a lot happening to be able to tweak our plans, to make them more suitable, etc. And I think the story is extremely strong. We continue to remain strong because India is a strong market. We have proven ourselves. We've proven ourselves more strongly during the lockdown period than anybody else in the world, right? So I think all around, including I think co-working spaces, will continue to have that level of demand because, again, like I said, the big players, the medium players, the small players. So the big players are very confident they'll go for more captive spaces. But the medium-sized players, the smaller players, they will require more flexibility, shorter rent, so that they can exit and tweak their operating costs accordingly, just so that they are prepared for another downturn of this nature. So I think various business formats have a great opportunity to grow.
Thank you, Vishal. This is very, very insightful. A couple of things which I kind of get very starkingly, which is very relevant for our audience, is that some of our audience who must be listening to us in this webinar must be having smaller office spaces, like a boutique office space. And it's also kind of a direction in which they probably need to ensure to be relevant in the coming times. And
Right.
and um, and 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 Arnav, I think Vishal mentioned this as part of his commentary as well, and I want to go back to the impact of all these things. The companies looking to kind of reduce their rental costs with density increasing, density decreasing, more larger office space kind of being more space needed from a social distancing perspective. Do you foresee like a hybrid model which the companies would be choosing to keep smaller offices, or the whatever the office space that they have, they will not want to kind of move to a bigger office, but look at a flex space with some, co-working partnership with the main company's office, and maybe some kind of a intermittent remote working, but a bit more collaborative with certain co-working players from a long-term perspective. I mean, are these some of the behavioral changes that you see in the lease segment in some grade A, grade B, grade C office spaces? What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on these?
Yeah, so further to what Biluka and Vishal mentioned, I'll take it in two buckets as such. One is from a co-working perspective, and the other is from the actual commercial market perspective, right? As Vishal rightly mentioned, the bigger guys who are there, they can afford the rentals, they're managing the leases just fine. It's the SMEs and the medium guys that we need to be worried about. Even during the lockdown, as far as WeWork India is concerned, we leased out practically to the tune of roughly around 6,000 to 8,000 odd desks, which in terms of square footage comes to roughly around 1 million odd square feet in a conventional office space. And this is during the past 3 months, right? But a lot of SMEs and a lot of medium enterprises needed a lot of hand-holding during this duration. And I'm sure the same thing would be valid for the conventional landlords and the conventional developers and their leases also, So that is something that we really need to be cognizant of. And the market is not about the big boys. There are plenty of, even in the co-working sector, if you look at it, if my information is correct, roughly around 25 odd million square feet of space is leased out to co-working pan-India, out of which around 25% is the smaller players. Now, there is going to be an impact there for sure. We foresee roughly around 3.5 to 4 million square feet getting what do you call where people will surrender the leases as such, because it's just not becoming feasible to run these businesses anymore if there is no landlord partnership per se, right? But these are too early a time to really cement the fact that this would happen. But these, as trends are, this is where it seems to be going. In terms of from a co-working segment, your question is valid and great. I think there will be emergence of new working styles. Again, as Vishal mentioned, though people are talking about work from home, but I think it's going to be a mixture of all. It's going to be rostered spaces. I call it the 15-minute neighborhood kind of a scenario, where I think people would want to work from anywhere and wherever, whatever is convenient. And the flexibility will need from the actual company would have to be given to the employees to operate from. So if gone are and yet the conventional office space will not die down. People will still require a central hub, a mothership to operate from. So it will be a mixture of, let's say, a conventional lease where your headquarters would be accommodated, flexible space, and work from home. All three will come into the picture. From a flexible workspace perspective, we are preparing our spaces pre-COVID in terms of space utilization. See, as it is, if you look at it, and I can only strongly talk about WeWork India, we give a lot of emphasis on the common areas and the collaborative spaces, right? And these are very well planned. Yes, in the workspace area, the density reduces from the conventional office space perspective. But because these are collaborative spaces, the viewpoint and the thought processes that people should mingle in the common areas. And that's where I think post-COVID, pre-COVID also, we were ready for the social distancing and all that, because it's to the tune of 1:150, 1:160. That's how the common areas are designed in a traditional WeWork space. What the design also does is give the flexibility of to occupiers to modify the design as per their requirement per se. So there are no fixed tables, the flooring is raised. So tomorrow, if within a office space which we've designed for 40 people, you want to accommodate only 20, it could be done in a matter of 20 seconds, you know. So it doesn't take you time, it gives you the flexibility in its true sense, and it's ready for operations on day one. So we are ready for that, and I think that's how the market is going to. Flexibility is the new norm. Let it be from the way we live and the way we operate. And as Vishal again mentioned, health and security is again something that needs to be taken care of, and that's where each and every operator needs to concentrate on.
Thank you, Arnav. This is very, very insightful. Thanks. Sanya, I wanted to actually ask you a question related to the future of non-office spaces, commercial real estate. And we've all known, and you've kind of given us a commentary about how integrated ecosystems have ensured business continuity despite global lockdown. And now you wanted to talk about it earlier as well, but maybe this is the right time. What kind of future do you see for these integrated cities and townships? Are these disruptions expected in integrated ecosystems, and there are opportunities for trade to look out for? Any commentary on that?
Sure. Yeah. In fact, I think this is perfect situation. And parallelly, I've also been reading some of the Q&As which is coming. So maybe we will do a value for money and also combine some of the questions there, where a lot of folks are also asking that while there's a lot of discussion on commercial real estate, in a traditional market, it's more about office or back office, etc., captives. So I think combining the two things, what I see is this, the challenge coming out of the pandemic is actually creating a tremendous opportunity to really leverage on Make in India. Whether the business model which we follow, if companies have great confidence, they may take a thing on a one-time lease and may have there. If there is a business uncertainty, they may go on a rental model. So I think from a client perspective, the business model will have to be flexibility, and that's why we said we can do either. That is what is really clients are looking for. The other aspect which I said was, obviously it is no surprise to know, I think even your poll was showing that more than half the people think in the short term the traditional offices will shrink, because people would want distancing, people would want safety. So from that perspective, when I look at it, what integrated ecosystem can do is, in the beginning, I talked of you can actually have a class of options, which is industrial, which is standard design factory, which is actually factory and flexible contract manufacturing combined with industry 4.0, and then you can have warehouse. So portfolio of rental opportunities can increase obviously, just if you are a one-trick horse, whether it is retail only or a office space only, that has to change. Therein again, the play which we bring to the table is because of our integrated planning of having industrial, commercial, social, and residential at one go. Therefore, that flexibility and even a bit of fungibility. You may be running a office slightly distance away, and you can actually have a factory right across the door. Yeah, and or you can even be there having a small showroom there. So that fungibility and their flexibility increases. The other important aspect of opportunity which comes up is, I think, because of a lot of things going digital and as well as the diversification, this classic model where the first wave typically would come in a tier 1 city and then the follow through trickle will happen in tier 2. For all you know, either it may, if it happens, it can actually happen across, because now you have realized, while of course there is scale and talent which is available in the greater cities, but because of the congestion and the infrastructure bottleneck, that's where it is also a challenge. So possibly the most severe amount of lockdown happened in a Mumbai or a Bangalore and a Delhi or the larger NCR. So therefore, if the integrated ecosystem are near the growth corridors but away from super congested hub, they survive. And that's when I had given an example, like we had given one example, but they can be multitude thing. And the third thing, there's been a lot of policy thrust as well as EODB reforms for pushing for Make in India. When MNCs come in, or even existing companies are present and they want to make in India as well as make for the world, maybe world itself, the market is a bit uncertain, and therefore everyone would want to dip their feet in the market and see how it is doing and then scale it up. So that is the third aspect, which where the flexibility of something like an integrated industrial ecosystem comes in, is because the platform is ready, you can actually go faster time to market because you only have to do what you want to do. Secondly, at a government level, you are doing a EODB policy. The state government gives you a fiscal incentive or a leeway. So in a way, you have EODB in finance. But the advantage which we bring to the table is we give you the EODB in operations. And then when you lay down these two things and combine it with the layer of business continuity and flexibility, that's where we see it will be a trigger for Make in India. The business model flexibility is what it is going to add. So that also addresses some of the common thematic questions I saw.
Sure, thanks. Any inputs for the trade because of these expected changes in terms of on how can people in the trade, especially the agents, can leverage some of these larger trends for their personal benefits?
So two things. Let me answer the tougher thing first. I think they have to, just like they have to rewire or rethink their own business model, because you are not going to find a classic opportunity that do you need X acre, I will give you an option, or you need X million square feet, I will give it. So I think the first flexibility is you have to go back and understand from the client that what is happening in their business. And there maybe we discussed a spectrum right from distributed smaller but one time to totally flexible. And with, so first is they have to go back and really understand with their client segments that what has changed in their client's life, what is there. The second is, as I mentioned, is it, most of the clients use someone from the trade, whether it is an IPC or the individual local trade representatives. They trust them as almost their trusted advisor. Therefore, you also need to go and speak to the industry to understand what is the change which we are doing. So they really have to understand and really adapt from the supply side and the demand side. And if you
Sure.
do, their opportunities are there. Many times there may be opportunity which traditionally you would have thought, I don't play in the space. But ultimately, I think you have to look at it, you play in the space of serving your client. So you have your client, it's a new business model, just go ahead and find it. It's not easy. That's why I said first I'll point the challenge, but then I will give what they have to do.
Thank you, Sanjay. This is very, very interesting. Now we are moving towards the last segment of our webinar, and we'll try and keep the answers a little bit shorter, but more like a fire chat kind of a thing. But I would want to cover different aspects of commercial real estate in a very short time. I'll start with you, Vishal. Um, any take on the architectural changes for office space? I know we covered about that, but in terms of any attitude changing for work and workspaces, any quick thing, and the impact of this on the trade, where the commercial real estate brokers dealing in the office real estate can potentially use certain advice from you, Vishal.
So I think right now we are at very early stages. There's a lot of work going on. See, a lot of plans evolve from experience. You
Mhm.
can look ahead only that much, right? So the obvious things are, architecturally, I would not say so much, but it will be functionally, how functionally we are actually creating spaces. For example, how do we reduce touch points? I mean, it's been spoken a million times. How do we not touch elevator buttons, etc.? How do we probably we'll have to increase the number of elevators because you have to reduce the number of passengers traveling in a lift in one trip. That's one point. The second point will be how will we manage our cafeteria spaces? Okay, so can we actually run it in batches? How do offices actually provide for their own spaces inside for these kind of activities? Um, so on and so forth. Even there are many such small points that can be created. But I think the most important point that one would like to look at is on an overall basis, what is the flexibility that is possible within a development to be able to implement uh, various functionalities, various actions that one needs to take, and how the developer is capable and willing to respond to those kind of changes that need to be taken. And of course, like they say, it takes two to clap, right? It takes two to tango. So even the occupier will have to create that level of flexibility in their own thinking and contracts to be able to go along with the developer. So I think all in all, it's an evolving situation, architecturally, functionally, and of course from a you can say a relationship point of view as well.
Okay, thanks, Vishal.
Right, I'll keep it
Dilepa,
brief.
thanks. Dilepa, one quick question. Do you think that, from an investment, real estate, commercial real estate as an investment option, um, any thoughts on the impact on the fractional ownership models that are upcoming? And also, do you think that the kind of investment asset class, there would be a shift in the types of properties that we are looking at from an investment perspective, more moving away from malls and office spaces to a warehousing or any other kind of property types from an investment and pure play investment perspective? And you are on mute.
Thank you, Amit. Just to give you a quick small update, I think if you look at our construction cost over past 10 years, as compared to today, is raised anywhere between 20 to 25%. So, but whereas the land cost has gone phenomenally 150% more than that. So these factors have added in real estate investment in a great potential to see this. This is a great opportunity for most people to come in there. So I also want to add a few more things, like like when you just now spoke about startup sales, where how do you see this particular sector to grow in the future? See, I normally see a lot of these family houses and the HNIs and small business houses are forming this platform to buy assets in the range of anywhere between 100 and 200 or 300 ticket size. These are all in crores I'm talking about. So they are looking at CBD or off CBD, but these are very prominently looking in this particular market right now because they find it's low hanging in terms of price, and there is a certain amount of flexibility in terms of terms and conditions which can be discussed in this particular time. So there is a great traction, especially on this particular market which picked up. And also I noticed a lot of these investors forming a group, not just looking at a smaller office spaces in CBD, they're also looking at larger tech parks. If there is a particular opportunity to buy a floor or maybe maybe a 500,000 square feet, these are also in a great traction now. They're asking in terms of what kind of office space availability in the market, and where do you see in terms of the clientele, the kind of profile of the clientele who are occupying these particular spaces. I'm definitely see there's a great growth in terms of in the office space. See as a short-term impact. There will be some impact for a period of I would say between this end of the December, but post 2021 Q1 Q2, definitely these tractions is going to pick up in a large way. But right now, I think in starter sales, we're having a great demand, especially in for the long-term investment. So I definitely see the corporate real estate office space, which is needed specifically in city center and off city center, and also in the tech park. These demands are continuously coming, not just the institutionals or the banking industry, but also from HNI and family. And the second question, sorry, I missed out on you, Amit.
The second question was the retail part of these commercial real estate investments, which is the newer model coming up with a smaller ticket size in terms of fractional ownership. Any thoughts on any impact on the fractional
good
ownership?
question. I think as Vishal was mentioning, I think right now they are going through a small changes in the condition which is outplayed. I think these challenges are very short term. I think most of the retailers who are occupying this large mall or prominently located in city center, I think they have done a tremendous business over a period of between 7 to 5 years, and they know what kind of business they have generated and the kind of footfall which is kept bringing people into the malls. I think this is just a short term. I think developers also very predominantly understand the challenges they're facing right now in the market. I think they're willing to give that opportunity to maintain this retailer and the developer to work on some financial understanding, so that it is a win-win situation for both of them, so that they continue to occupy the space. It's a matter of 6 to 9 months. The earlier the vaccine comes in, people have a very short memory. The moment you have a vaccine in place, everybody is forgotten. So I think since it is playing out pretty in a long term, which I see could be early next year, I think I would definitely see more traction picking up in these markets in Q1, Q2. I think I would always say where unorganized malls, which are more landlord driven, they definitely facing a huge challenge because they're not grown organically. I think they are built purely to supply a certain pocket and demand in that particular area. So they definitely will face a challenge in this kind of a market. But I think eventually they'll all recover post-COVID. I think, but basically the larger malls, I think they are definitely built to stay longer here. I think they'll continue to do business in the future too.
Thanks, Veliappa. Our poll about commercial real estate as an investment asset class as compared to residential, I think our audience also agree with the fact that commercial real estate continues to be a much better real estate investment class. 77% of the people said yes to the question in the poll. And this brings us to the end of the very, very engaging conversation. And I'm sure that all of us can continue to have these discussions for maybe equal amount of time moving ahead, but we have to kind of come to an end. I thank all of you for your precious time and sharing your thoughts and wisdom with us and with our audience. We hope to continue to engage with you and create more value for our audience. I wish that all of you stay safe, and to our audience that all of you stay safe. Do care of yourself, stay safe, maintain social distancing, and the worst will be over very soon. Thank you all for joining. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Amit and 99 Acres.
Thank
and
you.
all of you. And stay safe, everyone. There are a
Thank
lot
you.
of questions which are there, Amit. If some of those they want to just post it on your FB live or on your
It's a good
Twitter,
idea.
we'll be happy to take them. So if some of you have posted and we haven't been able to cover it, we apologize on your behalf, and we'll be happy to answer it in real
sir.
world. So carry the
I think that's a
conversation.
good idea. We'll try and take it up.
Thank you, Amit, for hosting us and giving this platform to all of us to speak on your questionnaire. I think it is a great meeting everyone, Sanjay, Vishal, and Arnav. I think soon I'll catch up with you in Bangalore. I think Vishal too. I think it's good to know everybody in this platform and good to understand how you're seeing this particular market.
So, thanks, Arnav, and thanks, Vishal, too. Thanks.
Thank you all. Cheers. Bye.
Thanks everyone. Stay safe.
Okay.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you.
Umang, you there?
Sure.
Umang, you there?
See you, Amit. I'll connect with you later. I just
Yes,
put a,
Sanjay. I'll looking forward to that. Yes.
yeah, I just typed. I was just typed a thank you for everyone because there are a lot of questions which we couldn't
Yes,
answer.
I mean, I'm sure these kind of webinars, they invite a lot of questions, but with the paucity of time, it's always very difficult to take care of each one
Yeah.
of them. Some of
Yeah.
the questions are really great, and I really wanted to